Okay, so today what I want to do is I want to talk about making servo motors go. Okay? And to do this, you're going to need two servo motors. One, you're going to need a motor from your toolbox. Okay, and you're going to be looking for a spring RC. Okay, it'll have this little spring RC label right there. You should have two of them in your toolbox. All right? The other thing I want you to find is something like this HS311 servo, all right? And there's some in the back room, but I'll try to have them set out on the table, all right? And it will already have a servo horn mounted on it. I do have a bunch of servo horns in the back that I can show you, but you can also just take and use your wheel, if you want to, on the servo that is in your toolbox. Okay, so you can pull this out, and then you can pull out your wheel, and you can mount it on there, and then we'll be able to actually see what actually happens pretty easily. But that aside, we should actually get started. Before I get too much into this, I do want to talk a little bit about how these things work. These things all work, whether it is this one here, which is in your toolbox, which is a continuous rotation, or this one here, which is a normal, unmodified servo, and it moves about 180 degrees left and right. Okay? They all work with the same basic principle, which is they listen to or respond to what are called PWM, or pulse width signals, okay? Changes in voltage. And what you end up with is, what you need to be dealing with is a signal, okay? So you start off, let's say, for example, at no voltage. You get a spike. It holds it for some period of time, and it goes back down again. And then we get a spike. It holds it for some period of time. And I'm actually not drawing this to scale. It's actually going to be, you know what, let me do that. I'm going to draw it more to scale real quick. Don't save. All right. So to scale, it's going to be more like this. It's going to be a real long dead time, a short pulse, and then a real long dead time, a short pulse, and a real long dead time, and a short pulse. And this goes on and on and on. So, right, it just goes that way, and I'm going to say that it goes this way. You're going to pulse it many times, right? And this is going to be high voltage. This is going to be I'm not very good at this, 3.3 volts, okay? And this is going to be 0 volts, okay? So there's no voltage, comes up, shoots up to 3.3, goes back down again. This time right here is going to be 20 milliseconds. Okay? This time right here is going to be between 1 and 2 milliseconds. And if we send pulses of electricity to the motors in that format between 1 and 2 milliseconds with 20 millisecond delays, we can then control the operation of these two servos. Okay? So that being said, let's actually hook one up. Let's hook them both up, actually. Okay? So I'm going to take this servo here. This is the spring RC. This is the one that is in your toolbox. Okay? And I'm going to hook it up to this side, because this side of the board I can turn on and off. And be careful. We want the white color, the lightest wire, on the yellow. So we want it closest to the chip. Okay? So I've currently hooked this up to pin 12. Okay? So that last one right there is pin 12. And then I'm going to take this spring RC, this HS311, and I'm going to set it right here. And I'm going to hook it up to pin 11. Again, the lightest color. This is very important. The black wires are on the black pins, and the light colors are on the white, and I'm on pins 11 and 12. All right? And I'm going to put a horn on here instead of a wheel, because I've got some. Okay. So now I've got this horn on, and I've got a horn on here. And I've hooked it up to pins 11 and 12. And don't forget, I can turn this side on and off, right, with this switch right here. Okay. So now that we're set up, let's minimize this and let's do a little bit of code. So the first thing we want to do is let's create a couple of variables. And you should be doing this along with me. Okay, so I'll pause the video, set it up, and just make sure you can actually do these steps all by yourself. So I'm going to create an integer variable. I think I'm going to call it servo pin, and I'll call this servo pin 1. And let's make servo pin 1 hooked up to pin, say, 12. All right. That means that this servo is going to be the first one, servo pin 1, and it's hooked up to pin 12. And I'm going to get one for the other servo. And let's call it servo pin 2. And let's hook it up to pin 11. Okay? So this one is now hooked up to pin 11. And like so many other times before, we're going to need to set our pin mode. And I'm going to set my pin mode of servo pin 1 to output. And then copy this. And let's set servo pin 2 to output. Okay? And just in case we need it, we're going to open up a serial port. Okay. So you should definitely have done this. So pause it if you need to, but get yourself a sketch and get this code typed in. All right. So now let's make it do something. We'll keep it simple. I'm going to actually create a couple of functions. And I'm going to do my usual demo. I'll make a demo 1. Okay. Make a call to it in the loop. And then I'll come down here and I will go ahead and make a function. So I'm going to make a void function to start with. And I call it demo 1. All right. So inside this, like I said, I have to essentially reproduce this pattern right here. I want to send a signal, and then I want to wait 20, and then send a signal and wait 20. Okay? Simple enough. So let's do that. Let's do a digital write. Okay? And we're going to digital write what? Well, let's go with servo pin 1. And let's start with servo pin 2. We're going to do servo pin 2 first. We're going to work with this one here first. Okay? And I'm going to set it high. Okay. Whoops. I'm going to get rid of that extra. There we go. Now, like I said, we need to delay this. So we need to delay it between 1 and 2 milliseconds. And I can't do decimal points with delay, so I'm going to have to use something that gives me resolution between 1 and 2. So I'm going to use the syntax delay microseconds. And let's do, say, 1,000. So that would be 1 millisecond. And then, okay, so where are we at right now? We are at this point. Okay, so we're right here. We just launched up and we've held it there for 1,000 milliseconds. Now we need to make it go down. So let's make this a low. And now, instead of microseconds, we could leave it in microseconds, but we're going to be dealing mostly with milliseconds. All right, so let's get rid of the microsecond syntax. Just make it a regular delay, and let's make it 20. Okay? So if this works, we should see this motor move. So I'm going to do some good work right here. I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to call this servo test 2. Okay? I will save it. And now I will go ahead and upload it. And if we did everything correct, we should see, I got to turn this on. Okay, so it has moved into this position and it's holding it there. Okay, it's continuously pulsing right now in a loop. And to give it a test, I'll set that to 2,000. Okay, I'm going to hit Control U for upload, and we should see it move to the 2000 position. Awesome. All right. And if I go to, say, 1500, it should go to the mid position. And there you have it. Okay? So everything's working perfectly. Let's see, we're at 10 minutes. Let's do the same exact things with this servo. All right? All I'm going to do now is change it to a servo 1. And I'm going to upload it. And lo and behold, nothing is happening. That is because 1500 is the midpoint, and it always thinks it's at the midpoint. Okay? If we want it to move, we have to give it a value that is closer to 1000 or 2000. And watch what happens. If I give it a 1000, you can see that it goes in the clockwise direction. Let's give it a 2000. And now you can see it's going in the counterclockwise direction. Okay? And like I said, if I get closer I get to 1500, the slower it's going to move, because 1500 is a stop. So let's give it, say, let's give it a 1600. All right, so now you can see it's moving quite slowly, still in the same direction, because we're still on that side of 1500. We're between 1500 and 2000, so it's moving slowly. Let's give it something even, let's go even lower. Let's go to 1550. I don't know if it might actually be within the dead zone. We'll find out. There you go. So I can move very, very slowly. Let's move very slowly in the other direction. I'm actually going to make this now 1450. So we're on the other side of 1500. Okay. And now you can see we're moving very slowly in the clockwise position. All right? So in summary here, all we need to do is manipulate essentially this number right here. If we go 1500 on this motor, it's going to come to a complete stop. If we put 1500 on this motor, it's going to be right in the middle. Wait, here, let's do this. Let me switch this back. Let's compare. Let's see what happens if I put in servo pin 2. What we should see is a subtle movement away from center. And there you go. Notice it went the other direction. So there we are at 1450. Let's make it 1550. And you can see that we should shift over someplace over here. And in this case, if I go 1750, okay, it moves even farther, but once again, if I go all the way to 2000, we'll be at our maximum movement. Okay, so hopefully this was useful, and as usual, I will see you all again here soon.